Hello, welcome to Shrink Wrap. My name is Edna Lezotte, and my co-host is Szifra Birke. Szifra and I both are therapists. In addition to that, Szifra does a lot of gigs, as she calls them, in various aspects of marketing. And I do some consultation and supervision. So we're trying to move a little bit out of the realm of just therapy, right?
Yeah, I would say that for both of us, we've taken the skills we have, the communication skills, all of those things, that toolkit, and moved them into the business world or in the nonprofit world.
Right, into another world other than what we're doing,
right,
while still holding a foundation and a balance for behavioral health, which I think all of these are offshoots of that. We have a really interesting title today. Don't always believe what you think. And a lot of it has to do about stories that we hear and assumptions that we make. So why don't you talk about the workshop that you attended that really gave you the impetus for us to talk about this?
Well, I actually didn't attend quite. I facilitated it. It was a workshop that was really interesting. 3 dental practices closed their office for the day, and there were 40-odd people who came together to upgrade their communication skills, their customer relation skills, which were honestly superlative to begin with. So as I said to them, they moved from silver to gold in the Olympics. And I mean, just how many lawyers, or dentists in this case, do you know who would close their practices down on a business day and bring their staff together for this training, pay the staff, pay me, pay for the rental of the space? So that alone was impressive and tells you something about their communication. So in getting ready for that workshop, I started thinking about what would be some good tools for people to have that would be really useful for both themselves to their patients, themselves with each other, and maybe even in their world, that they could transfer out to their world. And one of them was something about what happens to most of us is something happens. Doesn't matter what it is. Maybe I say to you, Edna, would you mind resetting my watch for me because I don't know how to do it? And maybe what you do is you go, and right away, just that simple facial change in the sound produces a set of assumptions for me. Right?
Such as?
And I'm going to call that a story. I begin to create a story.
Okay.
Such as, she thinks I'm a dope. I can't even do this myself. She's irritated with me for some reason. Maybe my story is, what a jerk. She's never just able or willing to give me a minute. She's selfish, she's self-centered. So either I start labeling myself, I'm stupid, I'm inadequate, she thinks this, I make assumptions, I start labeling you, there's blame that starts floating around. And then what happens is that based on something that simple, I create so I see or hear something, or in this case, both, and I create a story.
Okay.
I then try to make meaning of that story, whatever way I'm used to. My own filter creates my meaning, and then I take some kind of action. Now that action might be, if I'm the passive type, then maybe I retreat because I don't want to say anything to you because I'm worried about conflict. Or maybe I think to myself, this really hurt me. I don't understand why she did this. And I kind of store it, and I may not even know I'm storing it. Mm-hmm. But 2 weeks later, 3 months later, you ask me for help, or I need your help again, and whatever I've stored is now fresh for me. And even if I can't remember the exact situation, I remember the feeling I had. Edna's not somebody I can trust with that. I can't go to her with my feelings. Or maybe I'm a person going back to the moment who is not the withdrawing type. Maybe I'm the attack type. You do that and I say, there you go again. You're making noises and huffing and puffing. And pretty soon we are probably, if you're not really centered, we're in the midst of a big argument, and nowhere in there did I ever stop to do what would be more productive, right? Would be to notice that I'm telling myself a story.
Right.
And to say maybe something to myself like, okay, Szifra, you're telling yourself a story here, you're starting to label, so that's a cue for you, your heart rate just rose, that's another cue, so why don't you stay still, because maybe Edna was making that noise because she has allergies. Or maybe she made that noise because she just, at that moment, made a noise. Or maybe the facial expression she had was because she was thinking about something else or uncomfortable. And as soon as I hear myself being able to even stop and then generate the maybes, my conclusion could be,
right.
Szifra, maybe you don't know.
Right. Maybe she's irritated too.
Maybe she is irritated. Right. It could be that you are in fact irritated.
So it has a short-term reaction, what you do initially to this story, but it also has long-term. You're going to hold on to that every time you come into have an interaction with me.
Right.
You're going to remember that.
Yeah, for sure with you, and maybe even with other people too. Maybe I develop a habit of I can't say things to people because they're going to roll their eyes or they're going to be, make sounds, and I don't know what to do with when they. Right. I don't know what to do with my feelings. The truth is, it's all about me.
Right.
I'm making it seem like it's about you, but it's really about my interpretation.
So then things happen to us, like our self-esteem erodes. We become very hesitant about how we communicate with all kinds of people.
Right, or combative.
Right.
Because some people become more combative. So some people, it's defense or offense. We tend to do one or the other. We may get kind of icy cold or withdrawn hurt, or we may get combative or attacking and sarcastic. So we have ways, that we...
Would you say that we always do this?
I don't know about always. I'm a little hesitant about always, but I would say that I don't know, maybe it's the same answer, that I don't know anyone who doesn't have reactions and create meaning out of their reactions. I think as people get better and better and better at evolving, they know faster, so they might get even the littlest hint that something might be awry, and they don't even get all the way to their story.
Right.
So I would say that yes, the majority of people do this a whole lot, and we make assumptions, we jump to conclusions, we get hurt, we get upset.
Especially about our personal relationships. I'm thinking as you're talking, we create stories about how the person we live with, or be it our spouse or our partner or our children, our mothers or our relatives, we have it all figured out based on one incident perhaps that happened Thanksgiving 10 years ago. Exactly.
Right, I heard this story. You're exactly right. I heard this story while I was at this marketing program that I'm part of. And the person told me a story at lunch that when he was 3 years old, his mom died. And his dad took him to an orphanage. And he remembers walking down this long hallway as a 3, almost 4-year-old boy. And somewhere as he was walking down and very lonely and scared, he remembered having this thought, which was, only I can take care of myself, some way. And it has ruled his life, for good and for bad. It made him very, very independent. Mm-hmm. But as he said to me, it's also cost me a great deal mm-hmm. with my wife and my children because I was afraid to let people get close to me.
Right, right.
I could only rely on myself, and so I didn't include them in decisions. There were so many ways in which, so that story, which came out of something, of course, really traumatic and upsetting, became absolutely the guiding principle of his life.
So it affected all his behaviors. So really, when I think about it, when you're talking about the watch, that may have come from an earlier incident for you. I can't do anything mechanical, I don't know how to fix watches, or whatever it is, and you're finally able to stick your toe in the water, and she gives you a similar response than someone else had, and there you are again. Were you able to go forward 2 steps, now you're going back 5 steps.
Right.
So it's a complex issue, maybe more than just one incident or one story.
I think your point is really well taken, that story really simply kind of plucks a chord that's already in us, and the chord starts vibrating, right, and we start getting an adrenaline hormonal rush. We know that the part of our brain, that little part, the amygdala, tends that fight or flight when the brain is under threat, which even a like sends the brain under threat if
right,
we don't understand what's going on. And so we get that reaction of, either fight or flight, which
right,
is the
and
attack or withdraw.
Something.
Yeah, we're all chemically changed.
And we generalize it to other relationships, to other people. So you may have the incident just with Edna, but if you have to ask someone else to do something else, your reaction to their reaction might create the same kind of story.
Yes,
so you can
like what you just said, your reaction to their reaction, because that's the real key,
right,
is it's our reaction. We think it's their reaction, so we're good at pointing the finger. If it's our personal life, we're definitely good at it. If we say to our spouses, well, if you right, just didn't do blah blah blah, but really it's so if it's you didn't get angry or you didn't roll your eyes or you didn't whatever, right, cry, then I wouldn't have to, that's why I'm doing this.
Right. But we have it all figured out, so we have the answer before the question is even asked.
Yes.
Especially in our personal relationships.
Well, you know what, at work too, though, Edna, it happens so much in corporate life,
right,
in attorney practices, in dental practices, in wealth management firms, the places that I consult, happens so much. It's really shocking. So it could be that you have let's say a paralegal with an attorney. If the attorney does the paralegal gets
freezes,
right, as does the front desk person. At a dental office, same thing, because there is a power differential, right, and again, our own training from early on about authority and whatever, right, else
carries into that.
Yeah,
oh,
and worker to worker as well. If even two attorneys they don't want to ask one another for advice, maybe, because they've felt humiliated at some point when they've asked for advice. Somebody made a derisive comment or rolled their eyes. And most of us don't do the most important part of this, which is to check it out.
Right.
Because that's pretty scary.
Right.
Right.
It's easier to assume and create your own story than to really ask the person what's happening.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we might not like the answer that we hear.
We might not like the answer, exactly.
We don't like to challenge people, and we don't like to confront people. So how do we do it without a challenge or a confrontation?
Well, we could ask, literally ask, I just had an experience, and I interpreted this as you may be being dissatisfied, but I'm just here to check it out. I had a great one of the people in the group on Friday at the workshop told this great story. I loved it. He's recently, this is a person our age, and he's recently dating, and had a couple of really great dates with this woman, and was very feeling like, this is such a nice relationship, and went out with high expectations, and they're at dinner, and it was labored. She was kind of icy cold. He would ask open-ended questions, and she'd give 1- and 2-word answers. And he created this whole story, right? Which was, I'm not interesting enough. I guess this relationship isn't going to work. I had hopes for it, but this maybe I'm not good enough for her, or maybe she's just going out with me because I can afford this nice restaurant, and she really isn't into me. She's just into the trappings. So he decided that his style tended to be generally to withdraw, and he was really working on changing his behavior. So he decided to say something, even though he was really nervous about it, and said to her, basically what I just said to you, I was really looking forward to this, but it was really a pretty uncomfortable dinner, and I'm trying to make sense of it. And I had high hopes, and I guess I really want to hear what's going on for you. And she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I didn't want to let you down. I knew this was a really important date. I have not been feeling well for days, but I didn't want to say anything because I thought it would be such a downer. So I thought I was covering pretty well. And I really am having a good time. But imagine if he hadn't asked. If he'd run off with this story, he literally might never have asked her out again.
Exactly. Exactly. But then I think about her part. Did she have a responsibility to be honest with him? And
well, she created a story.
Exactly.
Her story was,
right.
if I talk about this, it's going to be a downer.
Exactly.
If I right. So she created a whole bunch of fiction. We're not good at writing nonfiction.
So it's circular. Both of them, she started out with this story. If I cancel the date, he won't believe that I'm sick. He won't believe that I don't feel well. He'll think I don't want to see him. So I'll go anyway. So she comes into it with her script and plays it out, and then he creates his own script or his own story.
Exactly. That's exactly right.
And I can see when you talk about it how it can really become a foundation for honesty if both of us can have the courage to say what we're really feeling or what we're really thinking.
Yes.
And how if she would have been honest with him in the beginning or told him what she was thinking.
Right. If she had said, I'm really in a dilemma here because I really want to go out with you and I'm not feeling well.
Right.
I'm making assumptions here that you really want to go out and that this is important to you to go to this place, and I'm happy to do it, but I don't know if I'll be at my best.
Right.
What's your best thinking about what we should do tonight?
Right.
I mean,
and that would have moved it to some kind of problem solving where they both could have been involved.
Yes.
Instead, you had two different stories or two different scripts, and people were coming for the same problem.
Right.
I would think that after that encounter, that would be a foundation for a more honest relationship.
Yes, and that's exactly what he said. He said when he actually was able to come forth with this, that it's changed their whole dynamic from then on, and they now say to each other, "What's your story?" Is there if they start to get activated in some way or irritated by one another, or they notice, you're backing off or you're kind of being a little judgmental here, are you assuming some things about what I'm thinking? So we can check it out.
Do you think it's too late for people in personal relationships to do that?
I don't think so.
I mean, is there a time when we assume our children will do things or our parents will do things? Is there a time when we can begin this process, or people often think it's too late, and I think that brings us back to the whole issue of going for counseling or going for therapy. Oh, nothing's going to change, or it will always be the same because this is how I reacted or acted my whole life.
Yeah, I would say it's never too late. I mean, I've seen people in their 70s and who have begun to change patterns like this. Most of us aren't even aware that we are doing this. It just seems so natural. It's like breathing.
Right.
That we create these assumptions, jump to conclusions, and that we're right. Now, some of this takes a lot of courage, honestly, because you have to be able to say to yourself, I may not be right here, and I have to be really patient, and I may have to develop some tools of courage.
Right.
So I know, like in the workshops when I do the consulting that I do, part of the people who do really well are generally people who have the courage to begin trying something that's a little different for them, who have the willingness to say, okay, I don't really like setting my ego aside, but I'm willing to try it for the greater good. If it's really going to make my office more productive, and it's really going to help the clients attach better to us, and they're going to make more maybe it's all about money, they're going to make more referrals and they're going to stay longer. All right, I'm willing to try to do this. And what they discover is it's really liberating.
It is, because you have such a freeing feeling. I think about when you talk about when I do supervision, I often do conflict resolution between groups of people, and they'll go back and forth and they'll tell their stories, and I often want to say to them, but what are you really thinking? What's really behind that? And eventually, if I give enough hints or I give enough direction to them, they're able to have enough courage to come out and say to this team of people, well, this is how I'm really feeling. Could be doctors versus nurses. One, has the power, managers versus case managers. And so, but sometimes our work, in the work that we do, is to, help them, show them how they can have the courage to do it. I think that's the benefit of having a a mediator or an arbitrator or a third person in the room with people.
Right. To have a consultant or someone who's outside the situation, right. Absolutely, who's a neutral party, who can facilitate those, and whether that's 2 people in a room or it's a whole,
yeah.
Right, a whole team working together. It could be a huge office of attorneys. It could be a huge office of, Child and Family Services people, whomever it is, it doesn't matter if it's corporate, if it's nonprofit, if it's a regular business, or it's a group of families, or a family.
A family, I think. I can see it really being beneficial with the family because we have an assumption that when the person we're in a close relationship does something, that this is what it means.
Right.
And, she's done this. She always does this. She always reacts this way. Well, maybe this time isn't always. I mean, maybe we need to check it out with them.
Right. Well, I have a great story, and then maybe you could share the story that Pete, our director, told us before. But my story that was so shocking to me was that when I was in college, my father never came into Boston until this one time when I was dating someone they didn't like. And he came in, it was summertime, and just... I really knew why he came in. He was coming in to spy on, me and my boyfriend Barry, who is still a dear friend of mine, and so we joke about this story. And my father came in, and in his usual irascible way was, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Lots of criticism, lots of comments. Why try to do a different way? And when he left, I had absolute confirmation that I knew why he was there, and because nothing really nice happened. Now, fast forward literally about 35 years.
Wow.
And my father and I happened to be talking, very different situation, and he said, "Chef, you remember when I came into Boston that time when you and Barry were dating?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember. You came in," and right away did my assumption,
right.
Jumping to conclusions. "You came in to spy on us." And in my father's usual way, which I can't say for the camera, he first insulted me in a pretty vulgar way, and then said, blank, blank, Chef. And I came in because you remember it was summer and it was so hot. And I remember you was just like me, and he proceeded to tell me that he and I were very much alike. And if you said something about being hot, then I was going to go buy you a fan or an air conditioner. And that's why he came into Boston.
But you never got to that point with your father?
Never.
He never mentioned the fan or the air conditioner?
Oh, my father would, absolutely not.
Well, how could you read his mind?
Well, no, and I was too young and had had too many experiences with him that were kind of, the cattle prod to really know to ask the question. But if we imagine what the equivalent situations would be, and even that one, if I had been somehow this, Buddha evolved person, I might have been able to think, what are all of the other possibilities, which is one of the keys. How do you get to the point where you stop making these assumptions? You think things like, what are some other possibilities here? Because this is unusual for my father to come into Boston. Well, maybe he wants to see me. I don't know. I was home a lot, so that one might not have flown. Maybe he's bored. Maybe if I had asked myself enough questions and come up with I don't know why he's here, maybe I would have been able to say, "So Dad, why did you come in today?" I'm curious, if I had been able to stay neutral and not have my whole fictional story created, he might have said, "I was just wondering if you're too hot." Maybe. The probability, I don't know how high the probability is, but at least it's possible.
So it was your stuff?
It was my stuff, absolutely. And his story that he had to deliver things in this rough, tough way, right? But absolutely, it was my interpretation. And so what it let me know is how many of his interactions through my entire life did I filter through the same filter? And how many loving moments did I miss? Now, granted, he didn't send them along the usual loving lines, but still. So if we tone that down and we think about children and parents and coworkers and all of the other people in our lives, how much are we missing? Because we're not asking the questions like, well, why would they really do that? Why would they be intent on hurting me? Is that true? Is my assumption true? Can I be absolutely certain that it's true? Well, no.
But the other person doesn't always know what their means or their, often when we confront people, first of all, they're not aware that they do, especially their body language behavior. And secondly, they don't always know what it means. It's like a knee-jerk reaction when something happens. So when you say to someone, why did you do that?
Well, you probably wouldn't say exactly why. You'd report your reaction. I'm feeling criticized right now. Did you mean to criticize me?
Right. Or I feel like you criticized me.
Or
I feel like I'm being criticized.
Yeah, I feel like I'm being criticized. Is that an accurate perception?
Right.
Now, you hope the person that you're talking with has some maturity, because sometimes people will be like, yeah, you did, but at least you know where you stand, even at the worst, and maybe then you spike again and you tell yourself another story about, you have no right to criticize me. And
we only have a few minutes left, so we don't always believe what we think.
Right. So tell Pete's story.
Oh, you tell Pete's story. I think it's you're in a good storytelling mood. You tell it with your actions. Tell the story about the iron.
Our director said today, I have a story about this, and told us about a husband and wife. Husband needed to get his pants ironed for work, and he knew that his wife the night before had done some sewing, and thought to himself, oh, she probably didn't put the iron back where we always put it. He went to go to the closet where the iron would be, and it wasn't there. So he called her name, Mary, what's the story on the iron? I need to iron my pants. Where is it? And she said, it's in the closet where the iron goes. And she came to the closet and put her hand where the iron was that he hadn't seen, and took it off and handed it to him. And what is the moral of the story? When we tell ourselves something, we sometimes can't even see what's in front of us, let alone interpret.
Right. I think that's good.
That was a great story.
Yeah, I think that's. I like to listen to you tell your stories, especially with your father. I think you do your father.
A great Nathan.
Yeah, a great Nathan. I think you really do. But you're right. We talk about the assumptions. So, what we've learned from this is that we need to check it out. We need to have the courage to check it out. We need to gently make some inquiries from the other person, or settle ourselves down. It's certainly beneficial to us if we're able to say to the other person, what's going on, or this is what I feel is going on, because it will replicate itself throughout our lives and through all the stories that we do. We'll hold on to that very tenaciously, and so it's beneficial to us if we can check out, because what we think may sometimes be a story that we have created in our own
and has really serious ramifications so often.
In how we treat people.
Yes, and how we treat ourselves too. And therefore what we bring into our work, into our home, into our parenting, into everything.
Into our business world. And we make assumptions about how people will be how they react, how they dress, how they look, what kind of car they drive, not only